Good evening, I'm Salia Strzemska and you're watching World News Tonight, coming to you live from Warsaw. On the domestic front, illegal migration continues to be the top topic. The Polish Prime Minister's words about regaining control over migration made waves across European media. They have also led human rights organizations to criticize Tusk for announcing the suspension of asylum rights. We'll cover this in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at the latest headlines. Lithuania elects its parliament in a campaign overshadowed by the threat posed by Russia. Vladimir Putin's soldiers have executed 9 Ukrainian prisoners of war in the Kursk region. The Polish government admits that reconstruction following the September flood will take years in some areas. And we begin on a domestic note. Prime Minister Donald Tusk has announced a new migration strategy for Poland. Its most controversial element is a possible suspension of the right to asylum. The issue has sparked outrage among human rights activists. Tusk, however, says these measures are necessary as asylum laws are exploited by Russia and Belarus. Marek Steele reports.
This slogan could have been uttered at a Law and Justice Party rally, but it was said by Donald Tusk, writes the Polish weekly Newsweek about these words of Prime Minister Tusk.
If I say now that one of the elements of the new migration strategy will be a temporary territorial suspension of the right to asylum, and I will try to receive recognition for this decision in Europe, then it's only because we know well how this is exploited by Lukashenko, Putin, by people smugglers.
European news outlets did not let the words go unnoticed. Germany's flagship evening news show said Tusk has set a confrontational course with the European Union. A politician from the ruling coalition in Germany connected Tusk's words to Berlin's recent decision to reinstate checks on the borders with its EU neighbors.
Our neighbors now realize that illegal immigrants can no longer cross the border into Germany unhindered.
The measures announced by Tusk are a surprise to many, including Poland's conservative opposition.
Tusk has started to use words he never used in the past. He is starting to notice issues that he used to overlook in the past.
Suspending the right to asylum has sparked outrage among both activists and migration experts.
It's not in line with international or European law, humanitarian law. At the same time, it is in line with what many countries in Europe are already doing through pushbacks.
Pushbacks on the Polish-Belarusian border have continued during the new government's rule. The proposal to suspend the right to asylum has been met with some opposition from within Tusk's own political circle.
Instead, to change the position of Poles towards migration, he wants to play on this unhuman position only for the political reasons. And that's, for me, it is unacceptable.
The proposal is only part of a larger migration strategy that is aimed at reducing illegal migration to a minimum and facilitating the arrival of those who want to come to Poland to work.
We should be talking about integration policies, and I hope that will be in the strategy, which has not yet been published. But so far, it's all talk about security and about how tough Poland will be.
In May, a Polish soldier was stabbed to death by a group of migrants while patrolling the border. In June, Warsaw enforced a buffer zone on a vast section of the frontier. The number of crossing attempts has since fallen. This has been among Warsaw's arguments for the further tightening of migration policies.
Meanwhile, in Lithuania, the first round of parliamentary elections has just concluded. While exit polls are not conducted in the country, pre-election polls suggested a defeat for the ruling coalition. Krzysztof Panek has more.
The Social Democratic Party of Lithuania has been leading in opinion polls for months, with a solid lead over the centre-right Homeland Union, which leads the current coalition. Third in opinion polls is the recently created Dawn of Nemunas, an anti-establishment party which describes itself as center-left, while Western media usually classify it as nationalist. None of these parties are projected to receive a share of the vote large enough to govern alone, and another coalition government is expected. The parliamentary elections are the first ones taking place following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The war has heightened security concerns in the country. Analysts say that there seems to be a consensus across the political spectrum on issues of defense.
Every traditional party or every party that, according to the ratings, is supposed to become a parliamentary party after this election is basically agreeing on the same message of strengthening our defense.
Lithuania uses a mixed-member proportional representation system. Voters elect 70 MPs from a party list and 71 in single-member constituencies. One of these constituencies represents Lithuanians living abroad who tend to have their own sets of issues and priorities, like repealing the ban on double citizenship.
For me, the most important issue is double citizenship. I understand the state's reluctance to allow double citizenship because we have to mitigate the risk stemming from unfriendly countries. However, when it comes to EU states, our allies, I think people should be allowed to receive a citizenship of those countries and retain their Lithuanian one as well.
Some Lithuanians living abroad choose to vote by mail. Their ballots are accepted if they reach electoral commissions up to 7 days after the election day.
In our case, among the 365 people registered to vote in the embassy in Warsaw, some 150 wanted to vote by mail. In the electoral districts for Lithuanians living abroad, about 80% request a mail ballot.
Due to the mail-in ballots, the results of the first round of the vote will only be available after a week. Preliminary results, however, are expected on Monday. The second round of the voting for single-member constituencies will take place on October 25th.
An investigative journalist in Moldova has exposed how Russia has been buying votes and influence in the country. In just a week, Moldova will vote in a crucial presidential election, which, according to reports, Russia is trying to undermine to reverse the country's pro-European stance. More from our reporter, Ovidiusz Nicieja.
As part of the investigation, a journalist named Mariuca Nistor infiltrated the pro-Russian political movement. She found out how Russian money finances activists, recruits paid protesters, and bribes people to vote for Russia-friendly candidates in Moldova. In an interview for TVP World, she spoke about the results of her investigation.
People are paid monthly to carry out all the orders from Moscow. The goal to influence the election.
Moldovan police say there are 130,000 known cases of vote buying by Russia.
The police have recorded transfers only for the month of September, amounting to over $15 million, which were transferred to these individuals.
Next Sunday, on October 20th, Moldovan citizens will vote in a presidential election. On the ballot that day will also be a referendum in which Moldovans will answer the question of whether accession to the EU should be included in the constitution as a strategic goal of the state.
The referendum is what they're particularly looking at. I think in order to sort of underline the message that they want to get out, that Moldova is a split country and that many Moldovans would be against joining the European Union. That's the sort of narrative the Russians want out there.
Moldova's current leadership is strongly in favor of joining the EU. These intentions were reiterated during the European Commission President's visit to Chisinau this week.
For us, the European Union is not only an important economic partner, but a real family of peace and security. And we work tirelessly to be a part of this family.
It is your sovereign choice what to do with your country, and no one can interfere.
Just like neighboring Ukraine, up until 1991, Moldova was part of the Soviet Union.
In Ukraine, Russia is waging a physical war. In Moldova, Russia is using people's minds to attack.
Since June 2022, both these countries are officially EU candidates.
Now it's time for the latest from Ukraine. 9 Ukrainian soldiers who surrendered as prisoners were allegedly shot by Moscow's troops in Russia's Kursk region. Vladimir Putin's army has been intensifying operations around Kursk, hoping to push the Ukrainians out before winter. That's according to a report by the Institute for the Study of War. Our correspondent Oskar Terji is joining us live from Kyiv now with more information. Good evening, Oz. So what do we know about this latest incident and what is the situation on the front?
Well, what we know is what the Prosecutor General said, that 9 Ukrainian prisoners of war were executed, shot by Russian troops in the Kursk region. We heard from the Prosecutor General about 2 weeks ago that there had been 93 battlefield executions documented by the Ukrainian authorities since the war began. That's Russians executing Ukrainian soldiers. So this would bring that number up to 102 battlefield executions. We do believe that the Russians are executing more frequently on the battlefield. This is something that's greatly concerning for the Ukrainians. Now, we do understand that the Russians are trying to take back their land in the Kursk region. We heard from Syrsky recently, that Commander Syrsky, he's the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, that Russians had moved about 50,000 troops away from the front lines in Ukraine to bolster their efforts in the Kursk region. But they haven't had any real tactical successes so far. However, they are pushing now. We are starting to see some footage come through of Russian assaults on Ukrainian positions in the Kursk region. So we expect the battle to intensify there, at least before the winter months set in. The Russians looking to try and take a bite back out of the Ukrainian operation in Kursk so far. So far, the troops are holding. According to Zelensky, their forces are holding at the moment. But that remains to be seen how the operation will pan out in the coming days.
Oskar Terji reporting from Kyiv. Thank you, Oz. And now we turn back to Poland. It's been a month since massive floods swept through Poland, destroying lives as well as billions of euro worth of property. The victims of the flood and the government are now racing against time, trying to repair what they can before winter. Kazimierz Łysiak has more on these reconstruction efforts.
Damaged roads, torn bridges, flooded hospitals and the rubble on the streets. The more you travel down south, the more the Polish countryside starts to look like a war zone. According to the locals, the situation is still much better than it was just 2 weeks ago.
Now it's much better. It's incomparable. Maybe 1/5 of the rubble still needs to be cleared. Looking at it now, it's hard to believe what happened here. The water swept through the entire town, 2 meters high at least.
The flood wave came from the southwest of Poland and surged along the Oder River. A state of emergency had been introduced in several regions in this part of the country as they caught the brunt of the wave. Residents of many towns and villages were forced to evacuate when the flood wave came. When they returned, nothing was the same.
We came back on Monday and what we found was truly tragic. We lost everything to the water. All furniture, home appliances, cutlery, our bedroom was flooded. We have nothing.
Now, Poles living in the southwest need to prepare for the fast approaching winter. Repairing insulation and heating systems will cost thousands of euro per household. This is where the public fundraisers have come in handy. NGOs like Caritas Poland or the Polish Humanitarian Action have so far collected millions of euro for the victims.
Most of the funds come from the individual donors. We are currently also waiting for planned payments from several companies, thanks to which the collected amount will significantly exceed 2 million euros.
The total amount of funds gathered by NGOs has already topped 10 million euro, and it keeps rising. The government, meanwhile, has allocated more than 800 million euro for repairs in the 2025 budget. An additional 5 billion euro will come from the EU cohesion policy. The devastated areas of Poland are slowly but surely coming back on their feet.
The NATO commander for Kosovo has warned that tensions between ethnic Albanians and Serbs in the north of the country are likely to flare up again. Talks between Serbia and Kosovo have made no progress since the unrest last year, he has said. Michel von Blomenstein has the story.
there's a dangerous situation brewing in Kosovo again. Relations with their neighbor Serbia remain troubled, but the most risk is posed by Kosovo's two main ethnic groups, wanting to take matters in their own hands, NATO's commander for the region warns.
There is concern that heated political rhetoric could inspire some non-government forces to commit violence, such as what happened last year in May and September.
The Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti, called for a buffer zone between Serbia and Kosovo to be reinstated earlier this month. The buffer zone was put up after the Kosovo War ended in 1999 and was lifted in 2001. Kosovo declared independence in 2008 after a decade of failed negotiations with the government in Belgrade. Most Western countries recognize Kosovo's independence, but it's disputed by Serbia and its allies, including Russia. The issues between Serbia and Kosovo in recent times turned particularly risky last year. First, the protests in the Serb-dominated north of the country against ethnic Albanian mayors got out of hand. Tensions started to really overflow when the government in Pristina no longer recognized Serbian number plates. There had been speculation that Serbia might send in the military. An invasion didn't come, but the tensions almost came to a breaking point when Serbs crossed into northern Kosovo and attacked a police station. One Kosovo police officer and 3 of the Serb attackers had died. Kosovo accused Serbia of arming and aiding the attackers. Serbia denies these allegations. Trial of the attack's 45 suspects started last week. They are accused of trying to incite violence in an effort to stoke ethnic tensions in the north of Kosovo. While the number plate issue was resolved at the beginning of this year, the underlying tensions could still lead to another conflict in the Balkans.
Switching gears a little bit now, good news for the world of science. SpaceX has successfully launched the Starship mega rocket flight test number 5. It was the boldest test flight yet, as engineers wanted to see if they could bring the first stage of the rocket to the ground and catch it with special steel arms. Take a look at this footage.
Once again, the ship...
To push it away from the booster.
Excuse me, the booster is making its way back.
See it.
We're now down to 3
Our next major milestone. Wow. Coming down through the plume.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
See it.
Booster running current shutdown.
Quite an achievement indeed. Meanwhile, in the world of arts and culture, the Polish film Under the Volcano has been selected to represent Poland in the Best International Feature Film category at the 97th Academy Awards. Our reporter Klaudia Sikorska was at the film premiere.
No worries, it's summertime.
Narrated from the perspective of 16-year-old Sofia, the movie tells the story of a blended Ukrainian family that spends the last day of their vacation on Tenerife. When Russia's invasion of Ukraine strands them on the island, they must contend with isolation, duty, fear, and each other, the feature's logline says. The script was written by Damian Kocur and Marta Konarzewska, with Kocur also serving as the director. Under the Volcano premiered at the Toronto Film Festival this September.
The screenings in Toronto, there were like a lot of people. The feedback was good generally, but I just came back from Zurich like yesterday, and the people were super interested, and the most of the cinema stayed for Q&A, and that was kind of shock for me because the people really wanted to know how we made the film. They went into details and questioning. So, yeah, I mean, so far the audience abroad is really, really nice.
The family's guilt over being unable to help their countrymen is contrasted with the safety of their holiday setting, which gradually causes their relationships to fall apart. As Sofia Berezovska admitted, at first she did not want to be a part of the film. At the 49th Film Festival in Gdynia, she was awarded in the category of the Best Professional Acting Debut.
It was scary to work. It was really new for me to work. It was new people, new country, everything new, like to work in film industry. I just challenged myself and thought like, okay, I can do it.
The 97th Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Awards Gala is scheduled for March 2nd, 2025.
А що далі?
With this, we conclude our news roundup, and now it's time for our evening conversation. Tonight, we are going to discuss the parliamentary elections in Lithuania. The first round of voting is behind us. The results will be announced on Monday, but for now we have to rely on opinion polls. These say that the ruling center-right Homeland Union could be replaced by a center-left coalition of Social Democrats and several smaller parties. To discuss, I have Dovilė Šakalienė, Lithuanian MP, Social Democratic Party of Lithuania, and Matas Maldeikis, Lithuanian MP, Homeland Union, joining me right now. Good evening, delighted to have you with us.
Good evening.
Hello.
So let me start with you, Matas. Historically, the ruling party does not win re-elections in Lithuania. Do you expect this year to be any different? And what does it say about Lithuanian politics?
If I should go to the betting center, I would bet on our party to winning the election. The question is, will we manage to form the government, next government? It will develop on a lot of factors. But I think in tomorrow morning, we will see that my party won the election.
Dovilė, I guess that you have a different opinion. But let me ask you, what were the main issues driving the 2024 elections in Lithuania? And which of those was the most important for your party?
So I believe that all mainstream parties fully agree that the most important issue is security and defense. And on that, there is no disagreement. We have this regular national agreement, national accord on defense, which all parliamentary political parties do sign every few years. And that shows that on this issue, we can be absolutely united. Then other issues, of course, such as social policy, healthcare, taxation system, and etc. Well, naturally, there are differences, both between left and right parties and some radical and populist parties. But what we see now, even though this is just the preliminary results that we are seeing, only 400 voting places out of almost 2,000, but still we see that most likely the radicals will not make it to the parliament. So defense should retain the same direction, whichever government is formed. But it's only the first round, and in 2 weeks we will have the second round, and that will probably define the winner of the elections.
Right, and Matas, what about Ukraine? Is the support for the country still a big issue in Lithuania? And of course, some say that this year the Social Democrats campaign was about the Conservatives. And do you agree with this?
No doubt about it. Ukraine for us is too important even to discuss the question of not supporting Ukraine, of having any doubts in NATO, our position on what Russia is doing, and things like that. We had one populist party who tried to play this game, but they won't make it to the parliament, I bet. So going with the agenda of helping Ukraine is really important for Lithuanians, because it's not about only Ukraine, it's about our own security. We understand that we might be next if Ukraine would lost. So for us, it's very, very important issue. And in this election, it's one of the most important.
Right, so let me go back to the topic of elections itself. Of course, it's only the first round. But Dovilė, Lithuanian elections often result in coalitions. And so according to the opinion polls, right, so your party is expected to win more than 20% of the vote, around 20% of the vote, but no party is supposed to win an outright majority. So this will result in a coalition, most likely. And my question for you is, what kind of coalition do you envision for this next government?
So we have agreed to wait until the results of the elections to announce our intentions regarding any coalitions. But what is absolutely clear, that we would not envision coalition with conservative party, because we do see a lot of disappointment. Of course, we do have very loyal voters, and that is a tradition with this party, but there is a lot of disappointment throughout all Lithuania. And then we do not see any possibility to work with anti-state parties, parties who do not agree with values that are important to us. This is security and defense of our country. People who, well, sound like they were hired by Kremlin, or people who sound like they are anti-Semitic, because we do have certain movements that have anti-Semitic traits. So with those, we would definitely have a problem to work with.
Right, and I wanted to expand on that a little bit. So, Matas Lady, a visible trend is on the rise in Europe, the rise of populist parties, the AfD in Germany, the Freedom Party of Austria, the Brothers of Italy, National Rally in France, and the list goes on and on. So what about Lithuania? Because you've already hinted at this, that such an element is also present in Lithuanian politics.
Yes, I think the guy who is playing on those notes, like in Europe, he will get a lot of votes. He is now getting votes from Social Democrats. This is what we are seeing now when counting the votes. So I think he will be very, very high on the, will get a lot of percentage, and there would be a possibility of him even being in a second place, and fighting with Social Democrats for the, for the place. Because what I'm seeing now, the first will be conservative, again, what I'm saying. But differently from what is going on in Europe. In Europe, alt-right parties, populist parties, their utopia is Russia. They all more or less like Putin, and what Putin is playing the strong hand and things like that. For Lithuania, that doesn't suit. And that means if you want to be popular politician, you must be anti-Russian. That means that you can't be 100% like populist play in Europe. Alternative für Deutschland, Marine Le Pen, Italy, things like that. There is a different factor, and the factor is very Russia for Lithuanians. So that makes a little bit different from what we are seeing in Europe. But when we are taking the trends of, being anti-vaxxer, playing the, fighting the elite and things like that, it's all here. It's all taking copy-paste from Europe and a lot of from United States. So, it all being exported here, but with the little things that being the Russia.
Right, but then a party that has, that its leader is known for his anti-Semitic views, is supposedly in the third place. So, Dovile, could you please clarify that for us?
Yes, this is a very regretful situation. Currently, when we, as I said, see results from 400 voting places out of 2,000, currently he is in the second place. For example, Social Democrats currently have 26% and he has 19%, and Conservatives have 10%, just like Farmers and Greens. This is going to change when big cities will be, votes in the big cities will be counted. But for us, it is a disappointment because nobody has forgotten the Holocaust. And in Lithuania, we had one of the most thriving Jewish communities in Europe. And we failed them. And in this situation, the parliamentary position also was very clear that anti-Semitism is not acceptable. But nevertheless, as you see, within society, there is some support for that. But also, we shouldn't look at it just, from one aspect. Mr. Žemaitaitis is a very charismatic and very personality-wise, very noticeable politician. To my surprise as well, he is one of the most popular politicians in Lithuania. He is in the top 10 for the past, I'm not sure, but probably more than 5 years. And in this, we see that he also is very happy to mix facts and disinformation. He is happy to deny anything that is actually really happening in the parliament if it is useful to him. I mean, for him, I think the situation is best described that if facts do not correspond to what he says, the worse to the facts. So that is somehow very popular with some part of society who are usually against systemic parties, against traditional parties, be it left or be it right. And this also corresponds to the tendencies in Europe and, well, in the United States as well. But when we talk about elections, these are the people who are not the most active voters. And therefore, I do still have hope that maybe Mr. Žemaitaitis will not end up in the second place, as my colleague Matas Maldeikis predicted.
And on this note, we have to
collaborate on that.
Okay, and on this note, we have to conclude. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Dovilė Šakarienė, Matas Maldeikis, much appreciated.
Bye.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World News Tonight. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.